China and East Asia to the Ming Dynasty. Chronology. China. 8000 to 2000 BCE Neolithic cultures in China. 5000 to 3000 BCE Yangshao culture. 3000 to 1900 BCE Longshan culture. 1900 to 1600 BCE Xia dynasty. 1600 to 1046 BCE Shang dynasty. 1045 to 256 BCE Zhou dynasty. 1045 to 771 BCE Western Zhou. 770 to 256 BCE Eastern Zhou. 551 to 479 BCE Confucius. 475 to 221 BCE Warring States period. 221 to 210 BCE Qing dynasty. 221 to 210 BCE First Emperor of Qin. 202 BCE, 220 CE Han dynasty. 141 to 87 BCE Emperor Wu. 220 to 589 CE period of division. 220 to 280 CE Three Kingdoms period. 155 to 220 CE Cao Cao. 265 to 317 CE Western Jin. 317 to 589 CE Northern and Southern dynasties. 581 to 618 CE Sui dynasty. 618 to 907 CE Tang dynasty. 960 to 1279 CE Song dynasty. 1271 to 1368 CE Yuan dynasty. 1215 to 1294 CE Kublai Khan. 1368 to 1644 CE Ming dynasty. Korea. c. 400 BCE, 313 CE Early historical period. 313 to 668 CE Three Kingdoms. c. 37 BCE, 668 CE Goguryeo dynasty. 668 to 892 CE Silla dynasty. Japan. 11,000 to 500 BCE Jomon period. 500 BCE, 250 CE Yayoi period. 250 to 600 CE Mounded Tomb period. 600 to 800 CE Asakanara period. Introduction. In 1974, farmers digging a well in a field located in northwest China uncovered fragments of a clay figurine. Little did they know, they had chanced upon what has turned out to be one of the most fascinating archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Subsequent excavation revealed that beneath the fragment lay a massive underground pit filled with over 7,000 terracotta figurines modeling archers, infantrymen, and charioteers. Another pit contained terracotta cavalry and infantry units that likely composed a military guard, while a third one contained high-ranking officers and war chariots in what was perhaps a command post. These three pits are part of a much larger complex of underground vaults spread across 22 square miles. Most importantly, a large, forested burial mound towers over the neighboring fields containing these underground armies. This is where the first emperor of Qin was buried after he died in 210 BCE. Although it hasn't yet been excavated, experts believe the tomb is a microcosm of the emperor's palace, capital city, and empire. The pits, then, contained the army protecting his realm in the afterlife. With this discovery, our understanding of how China was unified under one empire after a long period of warfare was advanced immeasurably. East Asia can be defined in two different ways. Geographically speaking, it can be defined as the eastern region of the Asian continent and the countries located there, principally China, North and South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. But historians also define East Asia as a broader cultural realm, and include countries that both shared close historical relations with China and were impacted by China's political and legal institutions, and Confucian and Buddhist traditions. When defined in this way, Vietnam is also included. This chapter, however, as an introduction to the early history of East Asia, will focus on China, Korea, and Japan. Geography of East Asia. China's early historical development long predated Japan's and Korea's, which is why a chapter on East Asian history logically begins in the 2nd millennium BCE with China's first dynasty. However, today's nation of China is much larger than China was in ancient times. In earlier times, the bulk of the Chinese population lived in China proper, by which we mean the historical heartland of ancient China. To the east, China proper is bounded by the Yellow Sea, East China Sea, and South China Sea. To the south, it is bordered by the mountainous jungles of Southeast Asia. To the west and north, China is rimmed by a transitional frontier zone where land suited to agriculture gives way to mountains and plateau, or vast expanses of steppe grasslands and desert. At times, the dynasties of China became actively involved in all of these neighboring areas, incorporating them directly into their expanding empires or indirectly as subordinate, tribute-paying states. Those areas include parts of the Korean Peninsula, northeast China, Mongolia, Central Asia, and Vietnam. Within China proper, 2 rivers were particularly important to the formation of agricultural communities that served as the building blocks of Chinese civilization. Those were the Yellow River and Yangtze River. The Yellow River meanders through the northern half of China, where a cool, dry climate is well suited to wheat and millet farming. Beginning far to the west, this river meanders over dusty plateau, becomes muddied with silt, and then deposits this sediment along its middle and lower reaches. The plains surrounding these reaches are collectively referred to as the North China Plain. Historically, this was the heartland of Chinese civilization. However, the Yangtze River was just as important. Located in South China where the weather is relatively warmer and wetter, its long basin provided fertile soil for rice paddy agriculture. Over time, the early dynasties expanded into and included the settled agricultural communities in this region. Japan is an island country consisting of 4 main islands and many smaller ones located off the Pacific coast of the Asian continent. At 400,000 square kilometers, Japan is slightly smaller than California, although the terrain is more rugged. Because Japan is covered by mountains and traversed by numerous rivers, only 15% of the land is suited to agriculture. Much of that was concentrated in 2 plains, the Kenai Plain and Kanto Plain, making them particularly important to Japan's early history. Japan is also located along the Pacific Ring of Fire, where tectonic plates composing the Earth's crust frequently move and collide. That is why earthquakes and volcanic activity have been a constant threat to populations living on these islands. The Korean Peninsula is the location of North and South Korea today. Prior to the 20th century, however, it saw a long succession of Korean kingdoms. Extending roughly 1,100 kilometers southward from the Asian landmass, the peninsula is bounded by seas to the east, west, and south, and defined by the Yalu River to the north. Beyond that lies northeast China, which was only periodically included in the territory of Chinese empires. Consequently, because the peninsula lies between China to the north and west and Japan to the east, Korean dynasties have been deeply impacted by these states' histories and cultures. Like Japan, Korea is also mountainous, although coastal areas and plains located to the west and south were well suited to agriculture. The countries of East Asia share in the region's temperate climate and summer monsoon season. During the summer months, warm and moist air originating from the Pacific flows from southeast to northwest, while during the winter months cold and dry air originating from Central Asia moves in the opposite direction. Thus, those areas of East Asia located further to the east and south are generally warmer and wetter, and for longer periods of time. That made them well suited to rice paddy agriculture, and rice consequently became the primary cereal crop. In southern China, the Korean peninsula, and the islands of Japan, while growing rice is labor-intensive, this grain also offers high yields per unit of land, so it has supported population growth in these countries and, therefore, the formation of vibrant civilizations.